Yesterday was coined Liberation Day in the US, and today I'm joined by Dr Scott Osborne to discuss yesterday's tariffs. What certainty came about from those tariffs, what uncertainty there still is out there, and as investors, why we aren't worried. Keep listening for more information. Hello, I'm Hannah Kennedy and I'm joined by Dr Scott Osborne for an update on the markets. So Scott, thanks for joining me here today. Yesterday was Liberation Day in the US and we heard lots come out overnight. I'm wondering if you can tell us a bit about the tariffs that we heard about.
Yeah, obviously, Liberation Day, big day. So this is this is the Trump administration's term for this big tariff plan, basically, and they've told us in advance they were going to announce this big news, and it was this press conference and so on. But we now have the details of what that really means. And briefly, obviously we could go into lots of details here, but essentially the headlines are there is a blanket 10% tariff on any goods coming into the US, at least. So that means that basically any item that is imported into the US, once it hits the border, will be charged 10% of its value. So you would anticipate costs increasing for that. Then there was bigger tariffs for the quote unquote worst offenders. So these are places like the EU. Where the perception of the Trump administration is that they are taking more advantage of the US through their trade policies, whether that be tariffs or practices or whatever. And then there was an immediate 25% tariff on automobiles, so cars, which is that was put in place last night. So the 10% for everybody is from this weekend, so the 5th of April, and the bigger ones, the sort of more headline grabbing ones. Some of them are in excess of 40%. Some economies, they're from the 9th of April. And this is in addition to the stuff he's already announced on Canada and Mexico. We were kind of exempt from this process. It's we've been waiting for some certainty around this stuff. Now we have it. We've just got to figure out what it actually means.
Okay, brilliant. So you talked about some of the certainties then, things that we do know about. What don't we know about?
Yeah, I suppose that's the in a sense, it's the sort of red herring of this whole Liberation Day thing, is that we would get certainty. There are things that we do know now, the levels of the tariffs and the fact that there's this 10% universal tariff almost. That's very useful information we didn't have that we will be able to digest. But what we don't know and what is really important now is how countries and companies respond to those tariffs. So whilst some uncertainty is gone, there is still the second half of, the second act of this Liberation Day is, okay, well, what does the EU do? How do they respond? Do they announce retaliatory tariffs on US goods into Europe? Do they go to the negotiating table? Because obviously the administration have tactically left this window, for these guys to negotiate. So maybe they get to the negotiating table and hammer something out. And then at the more micro level, companies, what do companies do in response? Because these are ultimately the parties that will be paying that tax when it hits the US border. When they're importing goods, they have to pay that money to the US government. They then have to decide, okay, do we put our prices up? Do we take a hit on our margins? Do we just stop doing some business in certain areas? If you're an automaker in Europe, you just say, okay, we're going to give up on America as a market. These are huge decisions, and we'll only really know and get more certainty over these kind of things over the coming weeks and months. Short term, probably some of the government stuff in terms of trade policy. More longer term, the sort of company level decisions. But it certainly is a big change. It's kind of redrawing this global trade system, or at least that seems to be the aim. So we will definitely have to kind of roll with these punches as they come, and as we get incremental information, respond and react to it, and what we think the consequences will be.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Scott. That sums up what happened, what uncertainties there still are about. So my final question then is, should investors be worried? My answer to that question, for whatever the situation, is no. It's my job to worry on behalf of our investors, and we, me and the team worry about everything all the time. Is kind of what I tell people. There clearly are some worrying elements to this. The tariffs are undoubtedly bigger and more sort of broad than markets are anticipating, and that's been taken negatively because if you kind of roll back globalization and global trade, then there is just less growth to go around. So that's kind of the negative that the market's focused on in the short term, is that we're kind of unwinding some of the positive processes in terms of the economy. Obviously, there's a whole political piece around that, and it's a political choice and so on. So
that's separate. But yeah, whilst there are some negatives, and that's what the market's kind of focused on, there's always opportunities in these environments as well. And it's kind of the markets are always changing. There's always new things. There's always some risk or other. We've always looked back at that wall of worry chart, which some people may have seen, which is kind of the path of the equity market ever upwards, despite all these big historic risks, the global financial crisis, so on. So I don't think it's a kind of huge one day type thing. I think it will roll out over the course of this year. I think there will be challenges and opportunities. I think these changes will throw up problems for companies, and that will be bad for some of them, but it will be a problem for some of other companies to solve, and that company will do better. So as with any of these things, the key is just to stay nimble, react, but not overreact. That's what we've said about Trump since he was elected, that we'd kind of try and respond with a cool head, stay calm, think things through rationally, wait for the actual fundamentals to show us what's going to happen. Don't jump the gun on any of this stuff, and that's basically what we're going to do. And as has always been the case in history, there will be opportunities out there, and we'll go hunting for them as much as we try to avoid the areas that may struggle in this environment. So yeah, we'll be sticking to our knitting. We'll probably be doing a bit more work and maybe working a few more late nights, but that's what we're here for, and that's what we'll continue to do.
Brilliant, thanks Scott. And thank you for joining us. We hope that answered any questions that you may have, but if you have any more, then please don't hesitate to get in touch with your financial planner. We'll see you next time.